And we are live.
Hooray!
So excited to be speaking with Avi tonight. This is part of, well, I guess I should start by saying who I am. My name is Sean. I'm the owner of Athenaeum Comic Art. We are celebrating I'm calling this our birthday month. August, the entire month is ours.
Cheers.
Product placement. It's our third year in business. I sell original art to some of the most exciting and best cartoonists, and many of which work with Silver Sprocket, which we'll be talking about tonight as well. But for this celebration, I wanted to talk to some of the folks that inspire me, some of the folks I've worked with in the past. And I'm so lucky to have Avi here tonight to talk about their experiences with Silver Sprocket and comics and art and all of the above. So welcome, Avi. Really happy to have you here.
Oh yeah, thank you. I'm really happy to be here as well. And also thank you for taking such good care of so many of the artists that we work with. I've been so pleased and excited to watch the progress of Athenaeum and seeing cartoonists being treated with a level of respect and professionalism that is sometimes hard to get with indie comics. So hats off to you. You're really doing something special and important out there.
Well, thank you, and I owe you a lot. You probably don't remember. Well, there's two stories I want to tell. It's not really, the first one isn't really a story.
Oh no,
no, they're good. The first time I went to a small press show was at SPX in I think 2017. I was trying to figure it out. I think it was 2017, and I was trying desperately to get a piece of art from Casey Nowak. And Casey, I love Casey, sometimes hard to get a hold of, wanted just to give them a bunch of money for their art. And I finally met them at SPX in 2017. And they pointed me to the Silver Sprocket table to take a look at it. And I was just thinking about how amazing of a change Silver Sprocket in 2017 to 2024 is. And just seeing sort of like the pictures from Comic-Con a few weeks ago. Just I'm excited to talk to you about those changes a little bit. But the other story I wanted to tell was a few years ago. It was Father's Day weekend, and it was one of the first times that Athenaeum had attended. It was the first time we'd gone to TCAF, and it was still kind of pandemic-y times. So it was like a big deal. And my spouse, Deborah, had printed up the first like prototypes of Athenaeum t-shirts. And I was such an asshole to her when she gave it to me. I was like, it's so not cool to wear the band shirt of the band that you're going to, right? And I just gave her all this shit. And we go to TCAF, and like we had been in business for a little while, but we were growing. And so I always like taking folks around and showing them the books of the people that I represent. And so I took Deborah to the Silver Sprocket table, and I was like, I represent that person, that person, that person. And you, Avi, you pointed at me and you're like, are you the Athenaeum dude? And I was like, well, yes, I am. How do you know? Because I have the t-shirt. But from that moment, I feel like we gained a lot of confidence in what we were doing. And, we, from that interaction, we did the Rosemary show together at the Silver Sprocket store a few months later. And it's just a moment I feel like in my mind, I felt like I leveled up because someone that I really respected, acknowledged, and said such nice things about what we were doing for original comic art. So I always hold a place in my heart for you, Avi, for many reasons, but particularly for that kind of first interaction. It was really, really a powerful moment for me.
That's so fun. Oh my God, my internet's breaking. I'm taking this into the living room.
I can hear you. You're frozen, but I can still hear you. You're good now.
Okay, I'm still gonna go closer to the router, but no, that was really great to meet you. Here's a tour of my room, some original art behind me,
gosh.
Some Caroline Cash that I think you even sold me.
I did.
But yeah, no, that I think I do remember that. And I'm also not one to talk because, like, I mean, we wear Silver Sprocket matching jumpsuits at all of these festivals, and You got to promote yourself, or why would someone else do it for you?
Yeah, no, I've changed my. I mean, I think I went into this being a little bit too cool for school, and which is ironic because this is kind of a nerd paradise, and I do think that it's so important to celebrate yourself. I think it's a lesson that I learned the hard way, which is, yeah, market yourself all the time, because you want people to buy your art, you want people to buy your books, so that you can keep doing the stuff that you love. There's no shame in celebrating the things you're proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're really fun to celebrate. And the people who want to celebrate them with you are so cool that, like, I mean, I don't know, like punk rockers and cartoonists have like all the enamel pins and patches and stuff. And it's like, these are acceptable levels of acceptable topics of conversation. It's like a freak flag where we're not trying to be like NASCAR drivers with all the sponsorships. It's more like, I like these things, and if you want to talk to me about them, we can be friends.
Yeah, exactly. Before we dive into your history and Silver Sprocket's history, I'd love to start by celebrating a big win for you all and Caroline Cash, winning the Eisner for Best Limited Series, which is funny. Obviously, I'm a big supporter of Caroline, and I love her to death, and we're friends in real life outside of just selling art. But I was like hemming and hawing about going out to I've never been out to Comic-Con, and I was like, oh, I should go and support her. But I was like, there's no way in hell that she's going to win. And, I was like, I guess I'll pass this time. And next time when her book comes out, she'll get the award. And of course, I'm watching at like 1 a.m. here, 2 a.m. when she wins. It's a really exciting time for Caroline and for you all. But I wanted to ask you, like, what was that? Well, what was San Diego Comic-Con like for Silver Sprocket? But what was that moment like for you? Did you know it was going to happen ahead, or was it like a complete surprise?
It was a complete surprise. We had no idea. At first, like, it was funny because I was talking to some other publishers, and they were telling me, like, they were complaining that the Eisner committee was like giving him a call of like, hey, is this artist going to come out? Oh, they really should come out. Like implying like, oh, we won an award. We've got to like book some airfare and be there for it. And then they didn't win. So they're just like playing games with people's hearts. But no, it was really funny. Like this was our third Eisner ceremony that we got to go out for. And they seat us all the way in the back corner because we're like Silver Sprocket, whatever. And like the people in front of us and behind us to check in for the event get drink tickets, but we don't because nobody sponsors our table. Like we're just kind of like we're just barely in the club. But we're out there in the back corner having our own party and cracking jokes, and nobody's paying attention to us. But it was fucking rad though. Like, I mean, our self-worth is not connected to winning an Eisner, obviously. Like, that's not really our world. But this year, so many of the award winners were independent comics or smaller presses, and not just like big two. And having the cast of Stranger Things have to say pee pee poo poo from like a stage was just so cool. And like, yeah, it was really rad. I mean, Comic-Con's obviously like not our primary world. Like we're such a more important, bigger deal, for lack of a better term, at like, Small Press Expo or TCAF. But it is, for worse or worse, like where the industry gathers for the more mainstream elements of it. And even though we are deeply rooted in indie comics and we're not trying to be Marvel or DC, like they're already doing that very well. Mm-hmm. I do know that our comics are very important for the bigger world. Like Spider-Man as a mainstream comic is ridiculous. I think Caroline's comics are just so much more relevant to so many more people and so much more interesting to, people's lives and existences right now. And to get that recognition on the Eisner stage was so incredible, like so well deserved for Caroline. And it, as stupid as it is, it did open doors for us and got people talking to us and taking us seriously in a way that they probably weren't the day before.
This San Diego Comic-Con, normally I could care less about it, really. I mean, it's just not my world anymore. But this is the first time just seeing like how many indie folks were there, and I don't know if things, you're on the ground, but like from an outside perspective, it felt like a little bit of a shift. And for me, that's super exciting because I think what I love about this space, I've said it a bunch, but I think if people knew about it, it would explode. Meaning there are so many young people, old people, everybody who would just fall in love with some of the books that you all are producing and other folks are producing, but just mainstream kind of everything takes over. And I think if there's more cross-pollination, that really good things will happen to our community.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's really our job right now, is to show, like, we've got a generational shift happening of kids who grew up reading Bone and Raina Telgemeier and, reading comics on the internet and manga and webtoon, who did not grow up with superhero comics. So they don't have the blinders of like comics are just this weird, like power fantasy for 9-year-old boys, but actually a medium just like literature or film, and just contains such multitudes of everything. So I think it's a really exciting time. I think it's the most exciting time in the history of American comics for, storytelling. Okay, I've got a screaming cat. Okay. I will be immediately back. Hey, is it okay if I hang out in the guest room? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So I'll just keep talking while Avi's back.
My apologies.
No worries. This is exciting. We were just talking about chaos before we got on the live stream, and it's happening.
Got screaming cats and chaos all around.
I have screaming children in the background, so I think we're even.
And the coolest thing is now I get to be giving you a tour of my home. So we're now in the guest room. It's got all these masks and stuff, and my favorite part is this horrifying painting. If you want to stay in my guest room, there's a lovely bed and desk and good lighting, but you have to stay in this like you're gonna get murdered.
I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Well, so we were talking about how it's such an exciting time right now, and I feel like, again, from my perspective, as bad as the pandemic was for everything and everybody, it felt like an energy came out of it that a lot of folks had a bunch of time to focus on their art and to really kind of fine tune their skills, both in terms of story, being able to write a good story and their craft as a cartoonist. And I think we're seeing the sort of like the results of that in all of these amazing books coming out. And I, as Athenaeum coming out of the pandemic, I want to help kind of push that positivity forward so that we keep growing. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like a buzz in the air right now. And with all of the kind of other things we have to worry about in the world, I don't know. I tell a lot of people, like, I'm most optimistic about comics, which is weird to say. I just think that there's something so worthwhile in being in this community right now. And I want to do everything in my power to help it succeed.
I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, obviously I'm comic pilled or I wouldn't be in the position I am right now. But both, if you look at how comics are taken like worldwide outside of the United States, how they're appreciated in Europe and in Asia, and then just logically, and like the difference between that and what the American comic book world is, of all of this obvious potential for it being more of a thing, but also on a strictly like nuts and bolts level, it's one of the most accessible mediums for somebody to create or consume, where if you want to make a video game or you want to make a movie, it takes so much work by so many people to get a very small chunk of content. And if you write a novel, like it can be great, but it's hard for somebody to know that they want to take that in just by glancing at it, because there's larger barriers to like reading it. And with a comic, because it's, visual and written, like when you look at a page of a comic, you can't stop your brain from decoding it. So I feel like it's what is it, democratized? Like it's one of the most democratized mediums where anybody can just like sit at home, draw a page, show it to somebody, post it on the internet, and someone can read it. And I think it's really special for that reason, and being so liberating, and that like anybody can make a comic, anyone can enjoy a comic, and that just opens the floodgates to anybody being able to make the comic they want to make and finding their audience in such a special way.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's so amazing that with an iPad, right? You know, you can make
or just a piece of printer paper,
right?
Like even if you don't have an iPad, you can do it.
Although as an art rep, I'm like, oh God,
oh no,
use better paper. This is gonna be destroyed in 10 years. No, I mean, I agree with you, and I think the diversity of voices in this space is also really exciting to me. I feel like really of any space, I mean, again, you know, obviously I'm a big fan, but you can find a book that speaks to you. You can find a book that speaks of someone else's experience that you've never even thought of before. You can find so much out there right now. And, you know, that's why I'm excited by shops like, well, publishers, shops like Silver Sprocket, where you can go in and just see all of these things, all these beautiful books that, you know, you don't get to see very often. I was just in Vault of Midnight here in Ann Arbor yesterday. And one of my good friends, Stevie Rowe, who works there, has helped curate a bunch of indie spaces in that shop. And it's just so nice to be able to go through. It makes me feel like a kid again, right? Because as much as I loved Batman and Spider-Man as a kid, it just gets stale after a while. I'm sure there's still good stories and whatnot, but I want something fresh. I want folks that are really kind of playing with the medium, that are producing new things. So it's amazing that so many folks can kind of make it their own and do new things with it. And I think to your point, this generation coming up that they may not have mainstream comics as their basis, the way they tell stories is different now too. And that's super exciting.
And it's going both ways. You've got like Tilly Walden doing books for The Walking Dead, like that are winning awards. Like it's kind of sick as hell. And I'm not hating on any kinds of comics. I just think that there's more to it. Like, so no, absolutely. And, you know, we have the coolest job in the world we get to literally be cheerleaders for the coolest shit ever. And we're not like being annoying salespeople, because people thank us for showing them this thing that's their new favorite thing.
Yeah. And I always, you know, the collector in me is always trying to find that thing that no one has heard of before. You know what I mean? And it's not to say that these spaces aren't growing and that lots of people are participating in it, but it still has that vibe of like, you're in this insider club of like, I've read this, you know, Leo Fox book, right? And I'm in the cool kid crowd now, you know?
Yeah, you got that early adopter cred.
Yeah, which I love, because I'm not very cool in any other aspects of my life. I loved. Oh, go ahead.
Self-deprecation is over. We're cool.
I'll tell that to myself tonight. Would love to hear a little bit of the history of Silver Sprocket, if you don't mind. I know you've told it a bunch of times, but would love to kind of hear your journey with Silver Sprocket.
Totally. So, I mean, my own journey, like there's reasons sometimes that it's helpful to have a name of a brand or something. Like it's Athenaeum art rather than your own name, because it's like a thing and it has room for other people and growth and whatever. But I had previously been running like a punk rock record label, and I really enjoyed it and treasure so much about those experiences and learning and everything. But I felt like the people that we were hiring to do artwork for like t-shirts and albums and stuff also had really important things to say and really important work they were creating. And they didn't really have the resources that the music scene had, where the music scene had like networks of venues and bands that you could play shows with. And it was very social because it's a group activity. Whereas comics, I thought, were really important and interesting and fun, but it was very solitary and didn't really have those networks as fully formed. So we just kind of started making art and comics with a lot of the people from that same music community, sharing those values and models. And then the comics just kind of took over. There's definitely a longer version of this story to be told with like a bunch of name dropping and like totally absurd stories. But it was really like we came out of DIY like zine making and like anarchist values, and like we started out as a community run volunteer bicycle repair shop, like before kind of finalizing, well, nothing ever finalizes, but like what it is now has very linear roots to that.
Was there? It sounds like it's evolved, obviously, quite dramatically over the years. Do you have a plan, a sort of like a 5-year, like a business plan? Is there like a specific goal that you have in mind? You don't have to tell us, but or is it more organic and you're just kind of seeing where things are going? I don't know if that's a good way of framing it, but
No,
kind of in the sense of how much, maybe it's a better way of framing it is how much is planned versus how much is organic and trying to feel out where you're at a specific time, if that makes sense.
It does. It's really both. Like, I mean, I'm a worrier. I've got an anxiety disorder. So I plan ahead for everything. And I always have like 3 different 5-year plans of like, okay, well, like if this stuff happens, how do I want to navigate that? Or if the worst happens and it all goes to shit, like what's the exit strategy that like doesn't fuck people over? And like, how do I be sustainable? I don't have growth plans of like, all right, here's when we get like the movie production studio and here's where we like whatever. Like it's not, I've learned like I'm not really, I do try to like, I talk to people all the time to learn about their experiences and what's applicable or what I can learn from or emulate or avoid. So, I'm always getting help and studying, but I'm not trying to do like a massive growth trajectory or anything. I think like sustainability is really the most important thing. And we don't have like a business model where we're going to like grow 100-fold and then pay some dividends or something. Like I really, I think what we're doing now is really amazing and important and special, and it can work. So, but I do like, I want to be better at marketing. I want to be better at royalty accounting. I want to be better at distribution. Like, but all of these things are like very incremental. Like, I mean, I know exactly what I would do right now if more resources presented themselves. But we're not like, I'm not trying to be Marvel. Like there's a lot of reasons I don't want to be Marvel. And I think it's all very driven by like what the core values are of, accessibility, empowerment, and like uplifting important voices that aren't really represented. And also just like having fun and like, being true to what gives us value in our day-to-day that we feel good about doing.
Do you think, I think about this for Athenaeum in terms of either lack of resources or lack of capacity to grow kind of super fast, tremendously. Do you view it as perhaps a positive in the sense that you're able to be more creative in these spaces, and that, perhaps growing too quickly may not be good for the overall kind of model of supporting these folks? And you know what I mean? Like, I think about that sometimes in the sense of like, if I had more capacity to focus on Athenaeum at the very beginning, I probably would have fucked everything up, because I would have like, I don't know, gone down paths that weren't as organic as some of the ways that I've, been able to do it now. Like being able to have kind of lower stakes has allowed me to make decisions and take chances that maybe I wouldn't be able to if I was bigger, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, but always in hindsight, because
right.
At the time, like in the moment, it's always like, oh, fuck, I wish I had $1 million because I could do this brilliant thing. But like, I've got that experience of like being 18 years old and maxing out my credit cards to make records that I was sure was a really good investment. And And then like with hindsight, I'm like, oh, like it's like the more, if you have too many resources too early, like the like if you're going to make a boat, the first step is to make a garbage boat that sinks and then like learn from it to make a better boat. And you've got to you're regularly iterating your what you know how to do and how you do it. And if you have too many resources early on without those experiences to be a foundation, without have like it's a much less expensive mistake if you have less money to invest in the mistake. So I think slow, steady growth is very important if you don't have infinite resources, because like anytime you're trying anything new, you're going to have so many learning experiences. Like, I mean, even as a publisher, like we only really publish artists who have experience self-publishing so that it doesn't get to be time to print the book and they turn in their files and none of them are usable because they've never gone through the process of making a book and making all those mistakes. So with hindsight, I'm really glad that I wasn't given the opportunity to fuck up more spectacularly. But at the time, it was like, I wish I had all these resources because like I knew in that moment how they'd be really valuable. But like now I really appreciate the like, okay, this is a cool thing that we want to aspire towards, but like it's got to be slow and steady and organic. It's not, and it's got to be driven by the realities of what the needs are and what the world is doing, not like here's where I want to be, how do I get there. Like it's there is some kind of balance to the world that kind of takes you where you need to be and where you make sense to be.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I've also learned, at least in the original art world, is that before coming to this space in different parts of my life, I was much more sort of driven in very specific ways, in very inflexible ways. This is the way I need to do this. This is the proper way of doing it. And I've really learned over the past 3 years that you got to adapt to the spaces around you. If you're not going to adapt, you're going to not be successful. And
yeah,
I think you're
always changing.
right.
You can't count on anything to stay the same. You just pay attention.
Right. And I think having those core values, that I think why we get along and work well together, is that we have similar core values. That's what's important. But how you get there, you can get there a million different ways.
Yeah, but how you get there is like what you're literally doing. Like there's no like the end justifies the means, and it's like, but there's only means. Like there is no end.
Right. Let me ask you this. You talked about working with artists that have published their own work. Would love to hear how you all pick the artists that you're going to work with.
Early on, I knew that we didn't have the resources to like give someone an advance to like work on a project for a long time. So in the earlier years, everything that we published was overwhelmingly originally self-published by an artist. And then I would like my guiding idea was like, if I know that I have to buy 10 copies of this when I see it on the table at SPX or whatever, because I've got 10 friends that I just have to gift this to, it has value, and I'm not the only person who's going to see it. So I would just offer like, hey, these are the resources we have. Here's how I'd like to approach marketing and distributing this work. Can we license it from you? Now that we're more established and we actually have like, the best managing editor in the business, Ari Yarwood, the best production designer, Karina Taylor, like, we've got an amazing team that actually has experience in editorial and development and everything else. We're also accepting like pitches or reaching out to artists that we think are amazing and asking if they want to work with us, and being a part of developing original works from the ground floor rather than reissuing something that they've already done themselves that's ready for that additional distribution and marketing.
That's really, that's awesome to see how much you've grown. Do you have advice for cartoonists who are thinking of finding a publisher or working with Silver Sprocket, or just advice in general for up and coming or new to their career cartoonists?
Yeah, I do talk to a lot of schools and interviews and stuff. I think the thing that I want to there's like a couple things that I think new artists really have trouble wrapping their heads around is like start small with projects that you can finish. Like, don't set out, even if you have this dream project that this, like, 3-book epic, like 600-page graphic novel, just keep collecting your notes about it in your sketchbook, but like make an 8-page comic that you can finish, and then a 12-page comic you can finish, and very slowly work up the sizes of your projects so that you can finish projects and have them exist in the world where people can engage with them and enjoy them and see what you can do, and also make your mistakes on those projects to learn how to do a comic and learn how you like to work, what pace you work at. So when you're ready for that 200-page project, you know how long it's going to take you, you know what your drawing style is like, you know what your work process is like. And then in terms of working with a publisher, I mean, when working with anybody, the thing that makes them want you the most is that you don't need them. So like, if you already have an audience that already is buying your self-published works, the publisher sees that as easy money because they just get to take over that part of the business that you don't want to deal with anymore. So you could just focus on making comics. And it's the same thing with like us getting into stores or getting distribution. Like I was driving around or riding my bike around, hand selling books to all the local shops. And then to get distribution, we got turned down by all the distributors over and over again until I showed them, like, here's a list of 20 stores that I am, here's a cat. Here's a list of 20 stores that are carrying our books, and here's what they're ordering from us. And I want to focus on making the books and marketing. I don't want to focus on chasing down invoices and putting boxes together. Take this part of the business from me, earn money on it. So, like the more you do yourself and the more you build yourself, the more appealing you are to other people to collaborate with you on it.
As you were talking, I was thinking about Silver Sprocket and marketing. I know we've had conversations before about your approach to marketing, and I'm always, in comic spaces, it feels sometimes a little stale in the sense of how folks mainstream comics are kind of getting them out or not getting them out into the world. Like, for instance, we have a million Marvel movies that made bajillions of dollars, and they don't have comics that you can pick up and are of the movie, right? Like, people have no entryway into comics. They aren't selling comics at movie theaters or having free comics when you go to the movies. Like, it's kind of insane to me.
Yeah, they almost did. Like DC Comics, before COVID happened, they were going to have these like Coca-Cola style Wonder Woman vending machines. And that would have been really interesting. But then like the whole Warner Brothers change happened, and they just fucked that whole thing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like I think a lot of the more mainstream comic publishers are promoting primarily to people who already read comics, and they're not really, I don't think they have enough confidence in their product to try to market them more broadly, which is, I think, a huge disservice to everything. Meanwhile, like, we sell direct to over 300 accounts, and like a lot of them are not comic book stores. Like, we sell to so many like plant stores or like anarchist coffee shops or like sex toy stores and tattoo shops, where a lot of these places don't carry books or magazines really, but they have a little section for our books because it's relevant to their community, or they personally see the value and want to hand sell it. And it's tough because I don't know how, like, that's a really hard thing to scale. You get one account at a time, and it's a lot of work. So it's not like you just hire someone and focus on that. It's like what you're making has to legitimately be appealing to a particular audience for them to want to give a shit about it. But I don't know. I think so many people read comics on Instagram and on Reddit, and I don't think it's that hard to make comics more accessible and put them where people are going to see them. I love wheat pasting pages of comics around the streets of San Francisco and just letting people come across them and watch like the artist's social media just go nuts with being tagged with photos of their work out in the wild.
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up as a kid of the 90s, comics were everywhere. Like, everywhere I went, the grocery store, at the drugstore, my dentist office had comics it just felt like you could pick them up anywhere, and that's just gone away. And I think that in part is why your all books stand out, because they actually, I think there's so much love in the physicalness, if that's a word, physical book.
Oh, yeah.
Right. There's just such a beauty in holding a Silver Sprocket book. And it brings me back, it makes me nostalgic for a time where, I would buy single issue floppy comics. But the quality that you all are producing them at is so much higher. And it becomes an artifact unto itself, and something that, I can hang up on my wall to, kind of like when I was a kid, when you would buy posters and you would put them on your wall to say, like, this is my, like, come into my room and see who I am through what I have, the movies I own, the posters I have, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot to say about that. And I don't want to start sounding like a grouchy old man yelling at a cloud about what the comic industry is right now, but it's like, the American comic book format was designed by what was the least expensive way to print on like a broadsheet, like in like the 1920s or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was never like, what's the best reading experience? What's the best creative experience? And it doesn't cost that much more to make something actually feel good and actually show the art in a good, clear way. And it's like, there are publishers that like their model is making things that feel like they belong in like a fancy library where it's all like leather bound,
Mm-hmm.
like hardcovers that are a lot more expensive and less accessible, but like really feel like artifacts that like grandpa collecting the comics is like, I'm giving this collection to my grandkids. And,
Right.
but it's like, but that inherently makes them a little bit less accessible to regular folks with limited income who want to enjoy it. And, but like, if it only costs like 10 cents more to use really nice paper and print it really well and have it be the exact size of the artist's dreams to like really tell their story in the best way. And like, I want to make the thing that's worth owning, that's worth showing off, that like is a joy to read and really is in the service of, it's a lot of work to make a comic. Don't print it on toilet paper.
Yeah. And like I said, it is such a joy to read your all books. And I think what's also a joy is if anyone is lucky enough to be in the Bay Area to stop by the shop. I knew of you all and bought your books long before I was lucky enough to go there. And it's like a indie comics dream. It's there's just so much to look at. There's so much life in that shop. It just feels alive, especially compared to and not to, we're not shitting on mainstream comics or comic shops. There's really amazing comic shops all over the place, but there's something really special about Silver Sprocket. And I'd love to hear you talk sort of maybe a little bit about the history of the shop and kind of what the mission or sort of the vibe, like how it feels different in a really positive way. I don't know if you can articulate, you can probably articulate that better than me. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about kind of what's the vision of the shop, the physical shop.
Yeah. I mean, I really, we started the shop by accident. Like it was only supposed to be like a 2-week holiday pop-up in this like abandoned storefront that the landlord was letting us squat in just because we promised to keep it clean, so that the tenants on either side wouldn't get mad about like garbage and graffiti or whatever. And I think we built it very slowly because we literally didn't have the confidence to invest in like building out the infrastructure of it because we knew that we could get kicked out at any moment. But over like the first 2 years, we kept not getting kicked out and just very slowly expanded what we were carrying beyond our own works. So it was initially just like, we're at a comic book convention. This is just a temporary pop-up for the weekend, but it kept expanding slowly. And part of that is like what we talked about earlier, don't try to grow too fast and go from nothing to everything. But we were very mindful of making the comic shop that we wanted to hang out at, of like we had there was a record store I grew up next. I actually lived next door to its old location called Aquarius Records, where every single CD in the store had a handwritten review above it by one of the employees. And they had a rule that they would only bring a record in if it was personally vouched for as being awesome by at least one of the staff members. And they had to love it so much that they would write a paragraph about how good it was and why and who it was for. And so I tried to kind of bring that attitude to the shop of like, okay, we want to be supporting the arts. We want to be supporting local creators. We want to be supporting independent DIY voices that are not represented at all the other comic shops. But we also only want to have stuff that's quality, and we want to personally be able to vouch for everything in the shop. So the entire store, like all of the comics are face out, like there's no spines at all. So, you know, it's a comic book store. You can judge the books by their covers. Yeah, we just, you know, really wanted to, and we say like living room rules, like come hang out, read whatever you want. If something arrives shrink wrapped or in a poly bag, we open it up. Like, you know, we sell to readers, not to collectors. And it's okay if you're a collector too, but you have to be a reader first.
Yeah, it makes me think about, so I grew up in a town of 3,000 people, and yet during the comics boom of the 90s, there was a comic shop that opened in my hometown, actually around the corner from the apartment I grew up in. And as a, I don't know, 13-year-old, 12-year-old kid, I remember going into the shop and wanting to be acknowledged as someone who was part of comics, you know, like someone who was part of a scene, right? And it was such a cold experience. It felt so I felt like I didn't belong there. That's how the people who work there made me feel. And it was such a horrible experience in the sense that, like, as a kid, I just wanted to feel like I fit into something, and comics was still, even with like all the cartoons and stuff, it was not a very cool thing to be a part of. And I feel like that experience really painted a lot of my kind of feelings about comics. And even when I first started going to shows, I felt like I didn't fit in for a long time, and that was mostly in my head. But, you know, I look at a place like Silver Sprocket and just how warm it is and how inviting for everyone. I think of young Sean and how much he would have benefited from being in a space like that. You know, I think, to me, you know, what I especially love is that emphasis on community. And I don't know if you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like growing up, I got the most into reading books by hanging out at the library and hanging out at Barnes and Noble, where I could just be there for hours and pick up whatever looked interesting without any opportunity cost of like, I have to buy this and then check it out. And there's so many people who are regulars at the store now who even make their own comics, who initially were like, okay, I walk by this place every day on my way home from work. I thought it was a weed shop. Like, what the hell is this? And they're like, oh, they're comics. Like, let me do a half-second assessment of what I think you're about by looking at you, and then recommend a book that you should just read the first page of this and see what you think. And I think we're very mission driven. Like, we do a lot of things that are not profit motivated, but I do think that they're not inherently bad business, because I think they do pay off in the longer run. Like, anytime that somebody makes a good comic that someone's going to enjoy reading and be like, that was a good experience, I want to do that again, like, that uplifts all of comics. And that extends from the experience of it being accessible, of it being pleasant and supportive. Yeah, I mean, like, fuck comic book guy. Like, you know, there's better ways to do it.
Yeah. I'd love for you, if there are some moments in Silver Sprocket history that you're especially proud of, or kind of show a turning point. I'd love if you have any of those kind of anecdotes or stories around moments that you felt that things were going really well, right? That you were doing right by the artists. I don't know. Do you have any, does anything come to mind as a moment that you're especially proud of?
Kind of. I mean, I'm so proud of all of it continuously blows my mind. Like the artists we get to work with, the quality of the books we're putting out, like it's fucking rad. But I kind of, the things that sort of stand out to me more are like the mistakes that we were able to pivot from, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Because like one of the first books, well, like the first 4 books that we published were by people who were medium known in comics, but we didn't really know what the hell we were doing. And like the very first Ben Passmore book we put out, Goodbye, it finally earned a royalty like last year. And I'm so embarrassed that even though I had experience running a record label, I thought I understood the finances and the numbers and how to make it work. But it turns out that like I really didn't. And I was able to do right by Ben by giving him a bunch of free boxes of books and really promoting him and being supportive in other ways. But like, despite kind of fucking up, he still enjoyed working with us and still continued working with us. And we were able to put out like Your Black Friend and the Dayglow A-Hole books. And, you know, I just had dinner with him like a couple of weeks ago when I helped him get a gig at CCA. And like, I think the fact that people, like we only sign artists to single project deals, and you know they have exit clauses to not be stuck with us forever, and like it means so much to me that people want to continue working with us even though they've got these like 6-figure offers from major publishing houses, but they know that like they could do both or do things with us and get a smaller advance but get way better royalties. But like there are things that are like really fun, or I mean, I don't know. It was rad as hell when like NPR and the New York Times were talking about Ben Passmore's comics, and like my parents were like hearing from their friends that they heard me on NPR, and all of a sudden it's not like, hey, how's Avi doing? Oh, let's change the subject. It's like, oh, Avi was on the radio. Like
NPR famous is pretty famous, I think.
I mean, as far as parents go, they love that shit. And like I think, I mean, having fun, like building a bunk bed at Comic-Con is pretty ridiculous. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's always exciting when we like go to a bookstore and we're like, oh, hey, we want to like show you these books we think you'll be into. And they're like, you guys are Silver Sprocket. Oh my God, look. And they point at like an already curated Silver Sprocket shelf that like we had no idea that they even like, stuff like that's just really cool. And I don't know. I don't feel like there's like very specific, like, oh, this point changed everything. Like there are, as far as outside optics go, there definitely are those turning points, but every one of them is predicated on so much work and other very gradual accomplishment that it's not like any one thing changed it. But I would say like hiring Ari Yarwood to be our editor after having her freelance on a few projects definitely leveled us up so much. Like she was responsible for like the Limerence series at Oni and like all the things that they did that were really amazing in that period. And Karina Taylor joining us as production designer, like just made our quality, our being organized, our capacity to do things so much greater. And so I'm really appreciative of just how amazing my team is and that they trust me and that we're having fun working together.
Yeah. You'd mentioned finances, and we had a question come in around Silver Sprocket is wildly transparent about its sales. Is the quote, like the sales chart of the top 500 selling indie books from its store. What have you learned about being transparent in some of those financial items?
So I come from a school of like anarchist philosophy that like just like, well, like, I mean, I'm in charge. It's a capitalist business endeavor. Like I'm not going to pretend that it's a co-op or whatever, but I do think that transparency has a lot of value. Like when we put out a book with an artist, they can see a spreadsheet with all of the expenses and all of the income for their books, and they can ask us questions. And I think when your entire crew is able to look at your open book accounting, first it helps with the imposter syndrome of, am I doing this as well as I could be doing it? Well, if I'm sharing what I'm doing with everybody and they have eyes on me, if I do fuck something up, somebody can see it and be like, oh, this looks weird. Is that right? Let's double check that. Or that's a lot to spend on stickers. I know a place that you can get a better deal or like a better way to do it. So when you don't have transparency, you also don't have, you're not creating space for feedback about how you could be doing better. And by having transparency, it's like we're all in charge. We all have a stake in this, and we all are empowered to actually look behind the curtain and see how it's going and how it can do better. But as far as like sharing those sales charts, one of my goals with Silver Sprocket is like to prove like, I mean, I looked at the things in the comic industry that I thought were bad, and I had my own ideas about what could be better.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of just complaining about it on the internet, I was like, let's actually try it. Let's lead by example, and let's fuck up too, but in public ways where that can also be helpful to other people trying their best to do it and avoid the mistakes that we make. So, by sharing, like we have a comic book shop that doesn't carry any Marvel or DC, that only carries independent works. And a lot of people are like, how can you run a sustainable comic book shop doing that? And it's like, well, here's how. And if you've got a comic book shop and you really want to try supporting indie comics better, well, here's our best sellers. Like, look at the best sellers and see what speaks to you and what you think might do good in your store. And if I hoard that information and gatekeep, I mean, maybe it's fine for my shop to be like more exclusive of a source for it, but like, I would really rather not be necessary. And I'd really rather comics as a whole, like up its game. And I think sharing information lets us all learn from each other and have a rising tide lift all ships rather than being in competition with each other.
I agree. And I feel like in terms of thinking about equity as well, there's power in transparency, right? For folks kind of being able to talk in the comics world, right? We have all these websites where folks will post page rates and things like that. And, I think comics has a long way to kind of catch up in terms of other industries and fields. There's no HR in comics per se.
Famously, yeah.
Which causes a lot of professional issues, I think. But giving the folks a little bit more agency, I think, through transparency is so important in a space where I think it's really easy to be taken advantage of. In
any creative field, and you have a steady stream of people who are coming out of school who are starry-eyed and are like, oh, I want to do a Power Rangers cover or an Adventure Time comic, and that's so cool. Yeah, I don't need to get paid. This is good for my career. And I think like creative fields in general, especially ones that are like on a pedestal, like everyone wants to be a movie star because they see that publicly and are like, oh, like they kind of imagine what's going on behind the scenes, and it's never really like what they hoped it would be. And I don't think people like are like, oh, I really want to be a plumber, like in the same way. Like maybe if they have their friend or their family member who works hard, gets paid, and they're like, oh, that's cool, I love that. But like with comics or other like entertainment, especially like being a radio DJ, it's like there's the imagination of what that's like versus the reality of what that's like.
Yeah. I think about as well, we, as you say, we're capitalists at the end of the day, regardless of what we would like the world to be. But I think sort of how I've learned to justify it is that in the system, we're being exploited, right? And we should be paid for the work that we're doing, because if we're not, someone else is getting that money and exploiting others, right? And I think that's a hard thing to. When I was young, I was like, I do things for free because I love them, right? Like my Deborah, my spouse, when I first started Athenaeum, when my first artist, Casey Nowak, I said to Casey, I'll work for free because I'm learning, right? And that's kind of been the deal with Casey for forever, right? That's how I've become a big thing. But I was totally ready to take everybody on for free. And Deborah was like, no, your time is valuable. In order for it to really be successful, you need to be able to make it sustainable. And, I think that's really challenging for some folks. And I don't like being in a system that is so exploitative, but I feel like by being a voice of empowerment, of helping artists bring in additional income, it's not ideal. And if I really don't like having to be someone that helps a person pay their rent or pay for their groceries, like that's, or pay for going to see the doctor, right? But that's the ridiculous world we live in, and we need to be able to function in it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like if we lived in a society where all of our basic needs were met and we all had
God
healthcare
forbid.
and housing and food, then like, or a gift economy where we all just took care of each other, then we wouldn't even be thinking about money because there wouldn't be scarcity of the things that we needed. But given that we're stuck in a capitalist system, we have to be sustaining, because we also can't help other people unless we're able to sustain ourselves. Because if we're too busy starving and being malnourished and not being in good
Right.
health, we can't do shit for anyone else. So I would really like to work towards that utopia. And, we can make our own corners of capitalism less terrible. But like at the end of the day, we're still stuck in it. So we've got to do the best we can with it.
Yeah. And I think, to your earlier point about having fun and joy, the importance of fun and joy in doing this, I think about my advisor in college. My degree was in global studies, right? It's cultural studies and very like activist oriented. And I met with him one day, and he was talking about some of the graduates of the program, and he was saying that oftentimes there was this guilt that came from privilege, that kind of like prevented folks from growing as people because they felt so bad that they weren't suffering enough. And to his point, it's that we can both help change the world. We can, in a variety of ways in our local communities, we can be the force that helps change, and we can enjoy being alive. And those two things are not mutually exclusive, right? And I think about that a lot, the importance of enjoying what you're doing and building a community of folks that are having fun. Because once it becomes misery, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, I really hate the suffering artist archetype, because it's like you're doing something really good for the world. Like you really shouldn't have to suffer. And the world makes you suffer quite a bit. Like, let's not add to that ourselves beyond what the world's already doing. I mean, I could talk theory on this for hours and hours and lose any audience that we have, but I will overwhelmingly agree with what you just said, that, and people who don't have that privilege see people with the privilege and are like, you could be doing something to help people. Like, don't just feel bad about yourself. Like, go do something. And I think that's kind of like a responsibility of, if you're conscious and you have resources, like do something good with them.
I love that. That's kind of how I've tried to live my life, which is sure, you can complain, but also go out and do something to help fix the things that you complain about,
Mm-hmm.
Bringing it back.
Yeah.
to Silver Sprocket. I know we're almost at an hour, and I don't want to keep you too long, but a few
I'm
more,
all right.
few more questions, if you
Sure.
don't mind. So this was a question that came in from the Discord. Another question. Silver Sprocket also seems to do many things: publishing, the store, conventions. What else are you all up to? What's coming next?
I mean, we're largely continuing those things, because those are the things that we kind of know how to do. I mean, I do have like dreams of like, yeah, I think we just want to keep publishing and making the store be cool. We really want to do more like we already do a lot of community-based stuff of like hosting zine making workshops and like helping people to self-publish their own comics. And we like, kids come in and use our stapler and our scanners like all the time. I would really love to have like a dedicated workstation where local kids or anybody can come in and scan their pages or lay out their files. We would love to have like a little kind of community print shop, because since the pandemic especially, it's been so hard to photocopy your own comics. And like a lot of people have to like go online and order from like Mixam or whatever, rather than just a local copy shop. And Rezo prints are very affordable, but you have to really know what you're doing or pay someone to do it.
Right.
So like one of our dreams is to open like a little print shop and have like a dedicated staffer to like maintain the machines and help people use it. So stuff like that would be really cool. Um, we are doing a little bit of like more bigger businessy stuff, which is kind of awkward to talk about because of like certain stigmas around indie comics. But like, I think transparency is really cool. Like, a lot of our artists were being hit up by like film, TV people who like are like, oh, this might be a great movie, and let's like get your rights. And a few of our artists had some really bad experiences with that. So I was like, okay, like I'm gonna keep my focus on comics because that's what we do.
Yeah.
But I want to learn more about this world because I hope that there's a way to approach other media the way that we approach Silver Sprocket. And so we don't like ask for anyone's film or movie rights when we sign a book contract. Like we're not an IP farm, but we have developed like our own resources and like legal counsel to like figure out like what is the ethical way to help an artist navigate Hollywood. And so we're actually in the process of negotiating with a major network to potentially have a cartoon series come about for one of our books. And that's been very interesting to navigate. It's definitely not what you think it is from the outside, but we've also like learned so much of like there's so many things that we put in our demands and the way that we approached it that everyone's like, wait, that's not how anyone else does it. And we're like, well, yeah, but here's the value that we want to get from it. Here's our understanding of the world. Here's how this fits into the artist's career and how they want their life to be and the value that they have for their work. And they're like, oh, actually, that makes perfect sense. Like, none of our cartoonists are staying at home writing like 100 different pitches for TV shows. They've got the one comic universe that they've been working on there for as their life's work. And that gives it a very different set of considerations than somebody who's in the business of trying to make Hollywood pitches. And that really came about out of necessity of like not wanting to see our artists get fucked over. But it's also been really interesting and fun to like learn about that world and kind of see how it interacts with like the approach we've taken to comics and how to make other things be better. But like we're not pivoting. Like we're a comic publisher. I cannot let that take over my life because it's like totally crazy. But it's very interesting.
Yeah. And I think I not to that extent, but coming in as a original art rep, I thought that my lane was going to be original art, and it's turned into working with galleries. I've negotiated with libraries to get comics, printed and authored through a library. I see this space as so collaborative and so welcoming in terms of, maybe that's not the right word, but people will talk to you and want your advice in terms of, hey, I have this contract or I have this thing coming up. Can you let's talk about it. And I feel like there isn't enough kind of official spaces to go to, right, to have those conversations. There aren't the networks that a corporate space would have where you could go talk to someone who's been through it really easily because you work at the same company or whatever.
There are better things coming about, like, because even with comics, like there is what is it, like the Writers Guild that has like really low priced lawyers available that even if you're a comic book creator, you can get their legal advice on a contract. But those lawyers don't have any experience with the comics world. And even a lawyer who did have experience with comics might not have experience with your particular niche, like the type of indie comic that you're trying to publish, or like the industry experience of what to look out for with particular publishers. With Silver Sprocket, I find that I'm regularly helping our artists with all sorts of things, from like planning out their budgets or like helping to understand how to talk to like bigger giant publishers who want to do their work, or like merch companies, or like getting to talk at universities or whatever else. Like it's really, I'm a lot more of like a networking clearinghouse of like, oh, here's the thing you're working on. Let me connect you to some people who have relevant recent experience in that world, who can give you assistance with it. And now like the cartoonist co-op is fucking fantastic.
Yeah,
Like
really
anybody
excited.
who's making comics should be a part of that and be a part of that community and share resources and, you know, listen to people who have the experiences that you're about to get and learn how to best navigate them and pay it forward and share it with other younger people coming in. So I do think we're moving in the right direction, but like the deck is stacked against you as a creator. Like the publishers have the experience, they know what they're doing. The book trade distribution is all literally run by the major corporate, major five book publishers. Like there, you really do need a lot of support to stand up against all of the bullshit.
Mm. Yeah, and that's I have a lot of ideas about how to connect artists with folks that have more experience, or maybe not more experience, but perhaps can help
The
them navigate
specific
some of these
relevant
spaces.
experiences they need for what they're trying to do at that moment.
Right, and that's sort of a dream for me, is to create a Athenaeum nonprofit arm that kind of focuses on supporting, doing the grants, of course, but also, you know, we're dabbling now in mentoring with Remy Boydell is kind of, we're partnering on this first pilot program.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm really excited about it. And Remy's put together some amazing material for these folks that are going to participate in the first round of it. But I feel like I've been so lucky to have folks who have mentored me in a variety of spaces in my life. And I see many up and coming cartoonists, and I see a lot, you know, even with like Athenaeum Gives, the grant that we do, folks will just come to me and ask like how they'll ask me how to, you know, get something published or connect with someone or whatever. And I only have so much knowledge. I'd love to help create spaces that allow folks to get more kind of like formalized support. I think what's difficult right now is that there isn't money in any of this, right? So folks who are struggling to just survive, giving more of themselves can be a lot to ask of somebody. And so, you know, in an ideal world, there would be, you know, maybe some financial incentives as well in some of those. But at the moment, I see, you know, that kind of networking, being a networker like you are, is so important. Particularly, I think folks that are coming, I don't know, for all the good things that came out of the pandemic, I think the kind of like physical comic spaces, unless you're in an urban, densely populated area, it's really difficult to initiate that kind of a community space. And I'm trying to help that. You know, I don't ever want to be the center of, I mean, I'm happy to be the center of things, but it's not sustainable if it's like, you know, Sean's thing, right? It's got to be built out
I
of the
think there's a
community.
lot to be hopeful about.
Yeah.
For example, public libraries are getting really into comics and the fastest that they ever have been. Part of that is because of, you know, it's now been like deeply studied that kids reading comics helps them develop literacy skills and a love for reading. So everybody's, you know, really going all out to expand their comic sections and have workshops for like there's always been like writing workshops and poetry workshops. So now they're starting to have comics as well. And like all of the art schools are starting to have comic programs. And I think a lot of people have kind of a stigma around asking for help of like, I got to figure this out. I got to do this the right way. And they really need to know that like anybody who's gotten anywhere has gotten so much help, and people are very happy to talk about their experience and be helpful if they feel like they truly are being helpful. Like I don't like getting an email that's like a list of questions to help someone with a homework assignment. But if somebody like wants me to talk to a class or their group or whatever, like a Skillshare, like I'm so happy to do it. And I think people like comics is kind of solitary. Like you work on your comic by yourself, you read a comic by yourself. A lot of these comic artists are very happy to talk to other people who share their passions, and it feels good to be helpful and kind and connect with people. So people really shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. And I think, the Cartoon Co-op again is so good. Like they've got a Discord server that you can ask any question about anything and get a ton of perspectives of people giving you honest, genuine advice and support. So I think like libraries, indie bookstores, hopefully comic shops are all really leveling up and being more supportive to this community.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot about the interaction we had when you saw my T-shirt and you said, "Oh, the Athenaeum person." I think it's a solitary pursuit, comics, but you also, when you can, if you can, being able to connect in physical spaces too can be really important. Not everyone can, and it's the privileged folks who are able to go to shows or find a city that has a show. But those organic interactions can be really powerful too. And as someone who, I was very shy when I was younger, I've learned so much by just going up to folks and talking to them. It'll be okay, right? Almost a lot of the comics world is full of awkward people anyway, and just taking a little bit of initiative can really benefit you a ton in the long run.
Absolutely.
So I'm always encouraging folks to like go and do it. Put yourself out there, take a risk. The worst that can happen is that, I don't know, people don't want to talk to you. I don't know. It's never happened to me in the comic space, but most of the time people are just so happy that someone is interested in their work, right? So flattered that someone's interested in their work.
Absolutely.
A couple other questions we'll take from folks before I let you go. Reba, our friend from Australia, says, Avi and Sean, for the artists you pick up, how many have approached you first, or do you rely more on continually searching people out yourselves? Has that balance shifted as you have gotten more established?
We do. This is tough. So we did open submissions because we were really worried about being like an insular cool kids club, and we didn't want to just be working with people that we already know. But we got like over 750 submissions, and like we had to read 100 of them a week for 8 weeks to catch up. And so we did pick up I think 13 projects from that, and that was really cool. But like it wasn't really sustainable because it was just so much work and we have so much to do. But we are always going to like we love comics, so we're actively paying attention to like the internet. Like our friends are always showing us stuff that's cool. We go to the festivals, and we also have a store that lets people who self-publish their own work submit that work to be carried in our shop. So for us, like we can't, first, we're not really equipped to work with an artist who hasn't already self-published something. Like, and the barriers to self-publishing are really low, even if you're just publishing online, like a webcomic. So there have been stuff we've published where like it was a webcomic and we really enjoyed it. And we saw that the artist said like, okay, this is going to be wrapping up. Like 9 different people send me a DM of, yo, you got to read this, see if you can publish this. So if you're putting yourself out there and your work is good, like people will notice and will want to work with you. But like it never hurts to reach out, but like don't feel bad if like I get way too many emails to write back to a lot of them and I feel like shit about it, but it's like I literally can't. So but if you're out there promoting yourself, like if you're not out there promoting yourself, like you got to believe in your work and you got to take some initiative and do some work as well. Because if you're just creating in a vacuum, like I can't be the only champion of it. Like it really is a community endeavor of people finding value in it and wanting to share it with each other.
Yeah. Speaking
of kind of long-winded, I'm sorry.
No. I guess it was asked to me too. So from the beginning of Athenaeum, I started working with Casey, and then I was kind of shocked that people started to approach me very quickly asking for representation. It was kind of a mix for a little while as I was trying to grow Athenaeum. But now we're so big that it's mostly folks coming to me. Although I'm always very thoughtful about my model, which is, having folks who are more established as well as folks that I want to champion. And so, I think as an art rep, it can be really intoxicating to bring in more folks because that means more money because right? There's sort of it's
Well, it's
peaks and
exciting.
valleys. It's
You're
exciting.
like, I love this artist. I want to work with them. Like, there's kind of the Pokemon mentality of like catch them all, but it's
Yeah.
like my self-worth can't be tied to what artist I'm working with. Like, I'm not, there's no scorecard. Like, I've really got to be able to do right by the people I'm working with. And if I take on too many, I'm going to do a shitty job, and that doesn't help anybody.
Right, and you know, for keeping Athenaeum sustainable, there are peaks and valleys, right, in terms of original art. So you bring somebody on, they have a new book, you sell a lot of pages, and then the book's been out. You know, people don't buy as many pages. Then something else comes out, and there's another peak. And so, you know, as an art rep, you want to have enough artists so that there are always peaks and always valleys happening at the same time, right? So it's part of what's attractive of bringing a new person on is that you get a lot of sales. But we've seen some of these other big rep houses that just can't sustain do other bad things, but they can't sustain that many artists. And you know, I mean, this goes to issues of transparency and all sorts of things as well. But I have to be really cautious about who I bring on now. And I've learned that, and the vast majority of the artists I work with are wonderful to work with. But you really need to do your homework to make sure that it's going to be a good partnership. And it's beyond just the, like, you know, how much art you're going to sell. It's also, does this person fit in with the mission of Athenaeum, as well as, are we going to be able to work together well? And I work with a lot of different people. Yes.
Like, it's got to feel good. You, like, certain like egos or attitudes or demanding natures just won't work. Like, people have got to be understanding team players and communicative and all of these other things beyond just making a good comic.
Yeah. And Reba says, I know as a collector, I often fall into buying art from the people I already know. And Avi, you had mentioned that as well, as kind of being conscious of, are we just the cool kids club? And I think about that as well. You know, I want to represent a variety of people. I want to represent a variety of folks with different identities. And I'm very conscious of kind of what the space looks like, as well as, you know, trying to represent a spectrum of comics. And I think Athenaeum, of all places, like, I work with YA folks, I work with horror folks, I work with people with all different identities, work with a number of people in the LGBTQ plus community. It's important for me to kind of be a champion for these different spaces. Mm-hmm. And I do. I mean, I think the more successful you are, the easier it is just to kind of do it the way that you've seen it be successful already. And that can work, but it doesn't, I don't know, it's exciting to try new things and find new people. I think for me, a lot of the attraction, I was just talking about this earlier, is being the early adapter, the person who, like, I love that feeling. It's the same with music, right? You're like, I found this musician so early on. I was there before you. You know, there's that sort of like joy of the hunt, of finding someone that you see a lot of potential in. I mean, you know, I think of Caroline, who you had published already before we were working together. There was just something so compelling about her work. There was just something there. You know, and it was, you know, I think she's grown tremendously from early books, but I could feel it. It was just exciting, and she also is like one of the nicest people on earth, so that kind of helps too. But you know, being there at that kind of early stage is really satisfying for me to be someone who can help prop up someone who I think is going to be, you know, a superstar.
I think it feels good to feel like you're helping people and being a part of something in a meaningful way. And, you know, despite how noble we want to be, it does feel good to have the admiration and respect of your peers and your community. I mean, I don't know, when I was younger and I thought punk rock was really important, you know, it's like, well, I got into them first and I was at this show and I have this 7-inch, and now I'm like, I'm old. I'm just like, oh, is this cool? Like, let me enjoy it. Like, I don't care as much about the early thing, but I do like I feel like as a publisher, it's like if I find a piece of work or an artist who has a level of skill that I think is like way up here, and I see the appreciation of it being down here,
Yeah.
it's like my job is to help triage like from where it is now to where I think it should be. Um, and so it's fun to be like, well, the work is good. I just have to show it to people and I get to be a cheerleader for it. Like that's the coolest job ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I relate to that with the original art world as well. I get a lot of joy from finding some of these folks or being connected with some of these folks that I think, should be enjoyed as much as the Tilly Waldens of the world.
And Tilly Walden should be enjoyed more. Like,
agreed. We're getting there. We're getting there. Couple last questions. I was reminded of this when I mentioned that Reba is from Australia.
Didn't Caroline Cash have a question?
Oh, you have to bring her some sort of smoking thing, rocket, something
rocket
or other.
Babe.
Yep,
it's like
rocket
a Tamagotchi that you can.
There you go.
It's like a hoverboard for your face. I'm sorry, don't smoke. It's bad. I kind of stopped. Anyways, yeah.
That's a story for when we are in person. So in terms of, are any of the Silver Sprocket books translated into other languages?
Yeah, a ton of them.
Are there plans of branching out into international spaces?
Korean, French, German, cool. Italian. Yeah, we've got a foreign rights rep named Amber Garza at Full Bleed Rights. She's amazing. And we went to Angoulême last year. We're going again next year, and we're going to Thought Bubble.
Cool.
Yeah, foreign licensing. It's it started out really slow because our books are weird and we're like an unproven publisher and we have like weird sizes and whatever. But now that the word is getting out there and some of our books have really been hits in different countries, especially like Elizabeth with like Fun Girl, there's a ton more interest, and we're having a lot more meetings with publishers and showing off our work. So we want to get the work out there everywhere, like not just in the States.
Yeah, I recently started working with Elizabeth, and so interesting to see kind of her in Europe being.
She's like a rock star.
Yeah, rock star. And the States is very slow to catch up.
But it is. I mean, there have been multiple like window displays and best of list. We got defended by the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. Like we've been on the evening news a few times. Like, it's still happening.
Oh, it's
not a dud.
Yeah. It's just so exciting. Last question, which is, I sell original art. As we saw a tour of your house, we saw art all over the walls. I have sold you at least one page of art before. Do you consider yourself a collector of original art?
I have a lot of original art that means a lot to me, but like, I don't have the budget. Like sure. I have to be kind of frugal. Like there was a 10-month period that I didn't pay myself over this past year because of just trying to keep Sprocket going and the challenges of the world. So, I mean, if I have some more disposable income, I absolutely will be, because I think it's so good and important and exciting. I do have a lot of original art like at the Sprocket shop that really has utility. Well, I think art has utility. Like, I'm not trying to say it, but like we've got like an original Helen Joe page that Helen had turned into like one of those zines that you take like a single sheet of paper and then fold it up and turn it and cut a little thing, and it's like a little 8-page zine from one sheet of paper. But it's you can see like all of the eraser marks and whiteout and layers of Post-it notes to show like the work that went into the page. And I use that as an example to show people like, hey, you can make your own zine, and your first draft is going to look like shit, and don't feel bad about that, because nothing is like from God's fingers to the page. It's like you just keep on iterating it. So I think that's so cool to show people of like, Yes, make a zine. Just keep on refining it until you like it. Just stack on those post-it notes. But then I've bought a tiny bit of original art, but not really that much. But I have collected it just from like friends or
Mm-hmm.
cartoonists earlier on in their career when I was around them. So yeah, I don't have that much, but I do have some. I've got like a lot of artists that we work with and just artists I think are cool. I want more. I'll get there.
Yeah, it's it can be an addiction, so be careful. Although I running out of wall space. Are there any other? Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to chat about before I let you go?
We just launched a subscription service for Silver Sprocket, which because we publish cartoonists who people already know about and are excited about, like Caroline Cash, but like we also publish a lot of really incredible comics by people who have never really had a comic on this stage before, and we promote the hell out of them as well as we can. But it's like they're so good, they're all of a consistent quality, but it's like a lot of work to find out about them. So if you spend like $40 a month, you can get every single thing we publish every single month with a bunch of bonus stuff, and it really helps us with our cash flow and knowing how much money we're going to make each month, and you get really cool shit. So yeah, digital for 15, physical for 40. Check it out. I'm really proud of it. And yeah, we're just going to keep making amazing books. We have a packed schedule, and they're every single season. I'm just like dumbstruck by how amazing the books are that we get to publish. So I really appreciate everyone for supporting our books and enabling that to happen.
I love the idea of the monthly book club, I guess, because I was such a big fan of Shortbox when they were putting together. Especially for someone like myself that doesn't have the time to like think about any of the things. Like I love having that curated, especially when it's going to be quality, when it's going to be high quality.
Yeah, we're not getting rid of overstock. We're giving you the cream of the crop right here.
Yeah. Well, I've had a really great time chatting with you tonight, and to the folks in the audience, if for some reason you don't know Silver Sprocket, you really need to go to their website. And honestly, you can pick out any book, and I'm always amazed. I'll go to Vault and I'll pick up something from you all that I had never seen before, and it's always so good. It's just the quality of the folks that you work with, the attention to detail on those physical books. I think that you all have brought joy back to me in terms of reading books. For a while it was, I didn't have the space and whatever. I didn't want to haul around these books, but they're so beautiful to hold in your hands. And they're high quality too. It's not just like 90s era, like hologram cards in the front of the book. Though I love those too. It's just a great experience. And I wanted to thank you, just for being such a champion for this space. I feel like there's definitely lots of folks behind the scenes that are helping, grow these spaces, but you all are at the forefront. And what Silver Sprocket, what you have done and continue to do, I think is just so important to comics as a whole. And I think you all represent, a newer generation of readership that was not represented very well in the past. And it's just a really exciting time to be part of comics. And it's so nice that you all exist and that you all are doing well.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. I mean, it's really, we're just a bunch of, the creators we work with are so incredible, both as artists and as people. Our team is so incredible. Like, we're just having fun and doing stuff that we feel is important. And it really means a lot to see it appreciated by our peers and, truly being part of community. Like, we're not some soccer team to worship. Like, we're just out here in the trenches with everyone else, and really valuing our connections to the people around us. So yeah, thank you so much. That's incredibly kind. And this has been very fun. And I'm very much looking forward to our continued adventure through this universe.
Yes. And folks who are watching now and in the future, go check out Silver Sprocket's website, buy some books, go visit them if you're in San Francisco. And maybe you see some books you like and you think, maybe I want to buy some of those original pages. Go to Athenaeum, and I represent many Silver Sprocket published artists. So, well, thank you all for watching, and we'll have another live stream soon for our 3rd birthday. So we'll talk to you soon.